America's known our share of tyrants. In response to tyranny, we created one of the greatest guiding documents ever written by mankind. We stood for what was right. We've also made mistakes, but we corrected those mistakes by fighting for what was right both inside our borders and beyond. Today, America faces another challenge: Christian nationalism. Misguided faith and misguided patriotism justifying misguided deeds.
Would turn the hearts of those who are in power and position to make decisions.
That protest T circle, breach the line.
That's not who we are, America. The Constitution is as true today as the day it was ratified. America stands for freedom, and America stands for doing what's right. And it's time we start restoring the American dream. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Restoring the American Dream. This is Brian Mistro. I'm here with Michael Faulkner and Aaron Astor, who's become something of a regular on this. We've actually really enjoyed it, Aaron. And for those that haven't watched any of our previous episodes with Aaron on it, oh my gosh, the guy's got more historical knowledge in the tip of his little bitty finger than I do in my entire body. And I was actually considering at one point being a historical major, but no, it's great having you on, Aaron. It's and the backgrounds and stuff that you can talk about historically and where we're at today just really make a big difference. Michael, today's show is a bit of a change, and I am looking forward to this because let's deep dive it because there's some things happening. So go ahead, Michael. I'll hand it over to you and tell us what's happening.
Yeah. So we, I came across this video, and you shared it with me about the a legislative action in Hawaii and how they attacked or approached the limitation of dark money in elections. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Supreme Court ruled that corporations could give not virtually unlimited amounts of money to a political campaign, and without any accountability. Meaning they don't have to you don't have to know who gave it and or why they gave it. They can give to a super PAC, of course.
Right.
Not directly to a candidate, which means it can't be managed by a candidate. And listen, I've run for office twice, and I understand how that works. And sometimes the lines get muddied, and depending on the state and so forth. But that much money, unlimited amounts of money in an election, is not restoring the American dream. It does not help us as an electorate, as a people, because we don't know. I'm John Q. Citizen, and let's say there are 50,000 of me who want to give, and I give $100 or $200 or $500, whatever, that I can give to my candidate, and then I got a corporation that sashes up and they can give unlimited amounts of money for a candidate against my candidate. And why does money help? And then Brian, I want you to really kind of jump into who's giving what. I think that'd be a good slide to show. But why does that help? Because we know as marketers that the amount of times that you see a candidate's name, that you see a banner, the visualization of it, it does impact those who are on the borderline. It does impact those who may be undecided, right? And that is honestly, it creates a winning margin in some of those close races, and that's unfair, to be honest. If corporations can come in, one corporation, controlled by 10 people on the board, or one person making that decision, can give, $10 million to a local race, and it totally skews the amount of attention given to that candidate simply because. And what do they buy? What are they buying? That's the thing is like,
Airtime.
why would a corporation give that much money in a political race if there was no vested interest? They have a vested interest.
Yeah. So,
And I think, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. I was going to let you finish, Michael. I want to deep dive this just because of my background for a minute, so that the folks that are watching this understand and get a feel for how deep this is. So my background is in third parties. I was the national chairman and founder of the Alliance Party, which ended up being the fifth largest political party in the country. So I've traveled from Maine to California, Texas to Washington, you name it. I've canvassed in many states. And so, what I want to share with you a little bit is how money affects races. Number one, the FEC, which is the Federal Election Commission, sets how much an individual can give to a candidate depending upon. I'm not even going to deep dive on whether or not they're a third party candidate or whether or not they're a big one or two Republican or Democrat candidate, but I'll just say that they set limits on it based upon how much you can give for the primary and how much you can give for the general election. The theory behind that, of course, is that if you give money to a candidate, you can't buy a race. You're tapped out. That's the most you can give them, right? No, the whole thing is a scam. And that's not how it works. And so, yes, it's true. You can only max out a candidate with was it $6,300 or $6,500 for a primary in the general. And then this depends a little bit on the on what office you're running for and state and so forth. But it's not reality of how it actually works. And so, what is dark money? Let me explain this to folks real quickly. Dark money is money that can be injected into politics. It can be injected into a cause too. But it's money that can be injected with no limit. There's no top amount. And here's the kicker. You don't know who gave it. And so this is mostly done today through what are called C4s. It's 501c4s. So a C4 is a nonprofit organization that you can't write it off. In other words, if you give $1,000 to a C4, even though it's a nonprofit, you can't write that off in your taxes. You can a C3, a 501c3. It's like giving money to your church, right? You give money to church, you can write it off in your taxes. You give money to a cause, the police association, you can write that off in your taxes. You can't do that with a C4. But what you can do with a C4 is you can take unlimited amounts of money and you can spend it with certain rules on elections. And so, since if you could dump unlimited amounts of money and spending on elections, that's what's called dark money. Now, I just want to do one more clarification if I can, and we could do an entire show on how elections work. That's not the goal of what we're going to do tonight, but I do want to share one more thing. So, there's also a thing called a PAC or a super PAC. So, the difference is when you go with a super PAC, the amount of donations, again, are effectively unlimited, but every single donor has to report what they've donated. And number two, there can be no coordination between a super PAC and a candidate PAC. That means somebody that's running for office. So it's a lot to absorb. I apologize, everyone, but this is getting back to Michael's comment about money into elections, and this is how it works. So the biggest one would have been in election causation would have been Citizens United. Citizens United allowed corporations to act as a person, and as a person to individually set up PACs, super PACs, and be able to donate into these candidate races. They get to control it. And so, what does all that money do for you? Does that make sure you win the race? But no, but let me tell you what they do is that they will buy out the entire airtime up front so that your candidate can't even get on air. They can't get on television. You can't get booked. And let me just tell you the last little bit, and then we're going to share a video. The last little bit of this that you have to understand is that the amount of press that you get will determine how well you do in general in election. Well, the press, the amount of press you will get is based upon how much money you raise. The more money you raise, the more press you get. The more press you get, the more money you raise. You see where this is going? And so this is what they can do, and this is how you control and take over an election with unlimited amounts of money. Michael, what I'd like to do, if it's okay, since we've talked about Citizens United, can I share a video of what Hawaii has done?
Yes,
And
please.
yeah, and we can deep dive that because this is potentially amazing.
To whom does this democracy, whose 250th anniversary we are celebrating this year, to whom does this democracy actually belong? Same question raised earlier this month by the Hawaiian Republican State Representative Kanani Souza as she opened the floor debate on a bill that effectively bans corporate spending on elections in her state. If you haven't seen Souza's speech, you absolutely should look it up and watch it. Here's a clip.
Hawaii is not waiting for permission, not following the lead of others. We are leading. We are making history by restoring a fundamental truth. Power belongs to people, not corporations, especially political power. For too long, we have lived with a legal fiction that a corporation can stand shoulder to shoulder with a human being in the political arena, that it can spend without limit, influence without accountability, and project a voice so powerful that it overwhelms the very people our Constitution was written to protect. But here in Hawaii, we are not bound to accept that outcome as inevitable.
This is a very big deal. Hawaii just did something remarkable and genuinely historic. It passed a bill into law with near unanimous bipartisan support that effectively bans corporations from spending money to influence state elections. And it did this by redefining what powers a corporation actually has.
Okay, so just a real quick notation for the lawyers, real quick. A credit to MS Now for doing that. That is, although we kept it up there for those that were watching, that was a video and replication of what MS Now did. So now let's deep dive that for a second. So Hawaii has effectively outlawed corporations from donating for state elections. Aaron, what do you think?
I don't know. I'm not sure if Citizens United affects state elections. Does it only affect federal elections, or does it affect state?
Yeah, they could do both. Their particular law affects their state elections, but I mean,
Yeah, I'm just not sure what the constitutional reach is for that from a legal standpoint. I think that my deep dive comment here would be, how do we get to this point? And of course, there's a lot of it's based on media. I mean, you pointed out it's airtime, right? Ever since television became a major driver in how campaigns work, that costs money. And prior to that, we had an era when backroom deals and conventions, local conventions and caucuses, would be elected at a local level, kind of. And you'd have a machine essentially that would go pick all the candidates, and it obviously had its problems. But the idea was to open it up, and of course, technology made that possible, particularly being in the 50s and 60s. But it cost money, right? And for a long time, it was just the big three national networks, and you had your local TV. And then things got more complicated with cable television, and there were TV ads coming into it. But then, I think what's interesting about all of this is that newer media comes along with cable television and eventually the internet. And you had MoveOn.org, and on the Democratic side, you had various WinRed, various things on the Republican side. That's sort of figuring out that big donors are going to give the money they're going to give, but how else can people get involved in a lot of this? So people are trying to raise money. But as you said, I mean, how does the money actually affect things? And it affects things, I think, particularly when you have a relatively unknown person. I mean, it locks out, so particularly for a third party, it makes it almost impossible.
Right.
It sort of it intimidates people from even thinking about running against somebody because how are you going to get your name out there? There are obviously very, very prominent exceptions to this, and I think in this day and age where there's an anti-incumbency bias, there's this sort of populist uprising, there's grassroots organizers all across. I think we even saw it in Michigan, where the winner of the Senate primary was vastly outspent.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can work that against the candidate. You can target the person who is funding that person. But I think those are the exception more than anything else. And there's a reason why we have, it's hard to dislodge a lot of people. But what Hawaii is doing, I mean, more power to them. I don't know what the Constitution is going to say about it. I mean, they've more or less embraced this idea that all money is speech, that money is free speech, that you should be allowed to that your ability to give money to whoever you want is part of is a First Amendment right. I mean, that's essentially where the Supreme Court has fallen. I think that is its own problem. I think the other big problem is anonymity. I think that's a bigger problem. We don't know where the money's coming
The
from.
dark money.
Right.
I think what makes dark money dark is that you don't know where it's coming from. It's one thing if we know, okay, this person, we know their politics, we know where they're going with. We saw that in Michigan, but there's other times when it's a lot shadier and nobody really knows. And again, you spread it out to lower levels. So Hawaii is a place where it's a completely different market, right? I mean, it doesn't fall under the regular national media environment, and so the media there is going to be very particular, and it could be I think probably a lot easier for a big company to control it, and so I think they may be more sensitive to the fact that they do not want this outside influence coming in. I don't know
Yeah.
how successful they'll be constitutionally, though, to be perfectly
Well,
honest.
I love what they did because they built the law around a principle that they have, as legislators, they have the power to say what a corporation can do,
Right.
whether a corporation can exist, and the power to operate as a corporation in their state. And I think that's a wonderful way to look at it because they really in essence bypass because the legal language says that they have the power. So in essence, what they're doing is, without getting into and we can do a deep dive on the legal language and the legalese on
Yeah, we
this,
could do that Thursday,
which is
by,
very
by the
important
way. Yeah,
on
too.
Thursday.
Yeah.
But I think what's fundamentally important is looking at how much money is being spent to influence elections. And something Aaron said is who's giving how much. And here's the thing. We talked about there's been a lot of conspiracy theories about Russia, China, or some
Right.
foreign agents involved in elections. Guess what? They don't have to involve technology. They can put 50 million into a super PAC, and if it's dark money, it doesn't. Nobody knows who's behind this money, and or for what purposes they have given it, and so forth and so on. So it does control the narratives, and if they can control enough of the state elections and particular elections, I mean, it's a horrible system when you think about it's open to the highest bidder because we the people, we elect. And this is the principle that the legislator in Hawaii was talking about. I can't stand next to a major corporation and be equal. I get
Yeah.
one vote. They get, a gazillion votes for their money, and they're an individual, and it's not equal,
No, yeah.
and that skews elections in every which way. Because they have a vested interest and it's directly opposed to mine.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Michael. I want to deep dive this a little bit more because I think uh, as you aptly named this show tonight, it's who's buying our elections, right? So I'd like to share, Michael, if it's okay, a slide that shows. I don't know if it's the top 10. I think the top 10 mega donors, and what they're contributing to elections. And let's break that down for just a second.
Mhm.
So for those that can't see it right now, this is the top. It is the top 10 biggest individual donors that are giving. It says to Republicans, but that's, in my opinion, that's irrelevant for this program tonight. I don't care who it is. But so the number one top donor, and I'll read this for folks that are just listening. The number one top donor is George Soros. He gives to Democrats. It's an average of $102 million, I believe, a year or an election cycle. Then it's Mark Andreessen at 91.3. He donates only to Republicans. Elon Musk at 90.6 million. He only donates to Republicans. It's I don't know these folks. It's Jeff Yass at 89.3. And listen, I'm just going to jump through these because at this point it's irrelevant. So every single person I'm going to read out on this list are all mega donor Republicans, and they're the top 10 donors to Republicans. So you got 69.5, 67.6 million, 50 million, 37, 38 million, 33 million, 30, 32 million. And so the point out of this, in my opinion, isn't necessarily who it is that's giving. It is the insane amount of money that a single person can donate to influence an election. Elon Musk is especially a big one because he set up the America PAC. And the America PAC, what did they dump? 200 and something $1 million into the 2024 election. And I want to go back, so your people will say, well, why does that matter? Because they can go in and you buy airtime all up front. And so if they buy all the airtime on the televisions or the cable news networks, you can't, if you're the opposite party, forget third parties. If you're the opposite party, you literally cannot get in there to buy it. They control the entire narrative. So,
Can I, can,
Aaron, go ahead.
I want to be a play devil's advocate here because one thing that happened, again, it happened with the Michigan Senate race, and I thought that was a little bit instructive, and also for what Trump did. It's increasingly important how that money is spent, not just that it's spent.
Yeah.
Especially at those very, very high profile races where there's not really a matter of nobody knows who the candidate is. It's a big problem when nobody knows who candidate B is, but everybody knows who candidate A is, and so can't get the name out there. But when people generally know who both of them are, and it's really trying about manipulating opinions about them, a lot of it. I mean, what happened in 2024 was the use of alternative media. I mean, the Trump campaign was very, very good at reaching podcasts, going out to, I mean,
Yes.
that's a lot of
Yes.
coverage of that. And that
Yes.
was
Yes.
not much money at all. I mean, if anything at all, I mean, to go on Joe Rogan or something, that didn't cost any money. Those kinds of decisions. And the similar thing happened in Michigan. I mean, the TV ads were being spent by Haley Stevens. And Abdul Saeed did not spend as much there, but he had his other, organizing mechanisms, and so
Through
it was
social
harder with
media.
people
Through
who is,
social media.
some
Yep.
people argue that maybe she came close because they were watching local television ads. I don't know. It's hard to say, but it's sometimes when you max out those local TV ads, then people tune them out. And so it becomes a matter of the swing voters are who is using, TikTok, who's using other forms of media to get voters who are not regular voters, or reaching out in the into certain communities in ways that may not require as much money as it requires volunteers and organizing and time. Now, of course, that can also be paid, as there's paid volunteers. But I guess the point is that, or I think back in the 2008 primary between Obama and Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton had enormous amounts of money, and she was using a more traditional media campaign. Obama was using organizing out in offices in smaller towns, especially across the Midwest, and getting people to become comfortable with him, and people spreading the word. I mean, just using newer forms of organizing. So in a sense, the money tips the balance in many, many cases. Certainly in state races, which I think why Hawaii might have been particularly interested, because you often have a completely unfamiliar candidate versus one who everybody in the community knows. But when you have these higher profile ones, a lot of it really depends on the creativity and how you use that money. I'm not saying that justifies it, but that
Well,
it is, I think, a complicating factor.
the thing that Brian was saying earlier is that, because I know from having been there, done that, if you don't have so much registered as donations, you're not going to get earned media. So
Yeah.
you've got your free or earned media. Reporters are not going to cover you. They're going to look and see how much you've got in the bank, how much cash can this person win? Are they a viable candidate? And that's a horrible. Can you imagine if sports teams by ranking said, "Oh well, they're going to get a 10-point advantage." I mean, a 10-point advantage or 20-point advantage or whatever. And that somehow the outcome of the game, you still have to play the game.
Mhm.
You still have to line up, and the rules are the same. It's not that way in politics. In
Right.
politics, if one team has a bias, that major candidate has a financial bias, they're not going to get the coverage. They're not going to get a call
Yeah.
up from an an influencer or a local
You're
reporter
not going to be on
saying, "Hey,
CNN. You're not going to be on Fox. You're
Yeah.
not going to be on ABC. I will tell you,
True.
you're absolutely right, Michael. 1,000% you are correct.
and unfortunately, it leaves people out. It leaves the voice of the people. It leaves them out. Man, long for the days of the horse and buggy where you go to literally pull out a stump out of the back of your horse-drawn carriage, and you give a speech, and people would crowd around, and that was how you campaigned from town to town, barnstorming. Okay, all right, that's not going to happen. But still, I think there's a certain, now in New York City has one of the most interesting election laws. So if a candidate is outspent, they have an 8-to-1, up to an 8-to-1 match where they can, that's right, the public dollars, like
Hmm.
Mandami, look at how much public money he got. So you can't, when you have a public municipality that is paying to balance the scale on elections, it changes the narrative quite a bit. So New York City did that, and listen, I loved it, because it gives every candidate a chance. And what that says is they will match, up to a certain point of the dollars that come in from regular, ordinary people, that live in the district.
And so we have to shut down tonight. We're at the end of our time. We're going to continue this conversation, but I want to throw out one other that I learned in my canvassing across the country. And you'll find this interesting if you don't know it, because it's the only state that I found that does this. Minnesota. So in Minnesota, you can write a $100 check to the candidate of your choice. Your wife can do the same thing. Okay? And then the state of Minnesota will send you a $100 check to refund you for that money. Good idea? Bad idea? I don't know. We got a lot of money out of it from the Alliance Party because, from us, that's free money. They write a check, they get $100 back for, $100 and 100. So it's small money, but I wonder from a creative, how to restoring the American dream. From a
Mm.
creative perspective, is that one of the creative things that we could do that might balance out the skills? And I don't know. This next time we're hoping to have on, because as Michael said, he wants to continue this discussion. We're hoping to have on a very senior and well-known uh, legal professional. And I will leave it here. We're not 100% on it, but I think we will get him on this next Thursday to talk about, okay, the Citizens United how corporations, from a legal perspective, are able to do this, and how we might be able to overcome it as a country. Can Hawaii's model fix it? I don't know. Folks, I don't know if you're watching tonight, if you're watching from YouTube, or if you're watching from X, or if you're watching from Facebook or Twitch, or any of the places that we're streaming right now. But please subscribe. If you're following us on X, go press the like and follow button. If it's on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It doesn't cost you anything. You'll get this, you'll get Thursday Thoughts, you'll get the political arena, which you may have just been watching minutes before this. We've got multiple new shows that are starting, and it's an exciting time to be a part of this. I just want to say, this is, as I said last time, before our internet cut us out, Michael, this is my wife's favorite show. So, and she's watching right now, so you have to do me proud, Michael. All right, so thanks everybody for joining. Aaron, it's always a pleasure, and your historical perspectives are insane. It's incredible. It's always a pleasure having you on, and it's one of my favorite shows too. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight, and we will see you again Thursday.
You've been watching Reverend Michael's Restoring the American Dream. The Noble Media Group is on all major social media platforms. Make sure to give us a follow so you can watch this show and many others.
A